Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be talking about something pretty fascinating.
Okay.
It's called the Law of Shortsightedness. Have you ever heard of that?
I have heard of that, yes.
So it's basically this idea that we humans,
Mm-hmm.
we tend to get so caught up in what's right in front of us
Right.
that we completely miss the big picture. Like we're so focused on the now
Yeah.
that we don't really think about the long-term consequences of our actions.
Exactly. And the source material that we're going to be looking at today
Yeah.
kind of dives into that.
Yeah, this book on human nature and history.
Mm-hmm.
And they make the argument that this short-sightedness, it's not just a personal flaw.
Right.
It's kind of like baked into our DNA, you
Yeah.
know?
Like it's part of our evolution.
Exactly.
That we're just...
It's the animal brain.
Yeah, the animal brain.
Right. Like we're programmed to react to immediate threats and rewards.
Exactly.
Not really like sit there and ponder the distant future, and they give all these fascinating examples from history to kind of illustrate this point. One of the most like captivating stories
Okay.
that I came across was the South Sea Bubble.
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard of this?
I have heard of that, yes.
So just picture this like 18th century England, like they're like a rising power, bursting with ambition.
Yeah.
And right at the center of it all is this guy named John Blunt.
John Blunt.
He was like the mastermind behind this company called the South Sea Company.
Okay.
And Blunt was like this larger than life character. I mean, he had this vision of England becoming like the financial superpower.
Wow.
Of the world eclipsing even the French. They had the Mississippi Company at the time.
Right.
But Blunt was like, no, England is going to be top dog.
So ambitious. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about like his plan. Like, how did he think he was going to pull this off?
Well, his plan was as audacious as his personality.
Mm.
I mean, he proposed taking over the government's massive debt and turning it into shares in the South Sea Company.
So basically like selling debt as an investment opportunity.
Yeah, kind of like a really early version of a bailout,
Oh, wow.
but with a lot more risk.
Yeah, a gamble, to say the least.
Oh, yeah, a huge gamble.
And what happened? Like, did people buy into it?
At first they did. The shares just exploded in value.
Right.
I mean, everyone from King George I
Wow.
to like regular everyday people were just clamoring to get a piece of the action.
Oh, wow. So it was like the dot-com bubble of the 18th century?
Exactly. You can kind of imagine London's Exchange Alley, this narrow street just packed with people, from duchesses to, actresses,
Yeah.
all desperate to buy shares.
So what happened? Like, how did it all go wrong?
Well, as with all bubbles, they eventually burst.
Right.
And when the South Sea bubble did, it was a disaster. I mean, fortunes were wiped out, lives were ruined,
Wow.
and it really shook English society to its core.
It's like that saying, the bigger they are, the harder they fall.
Yeah.
And this John Blunt guy, like, was he like a con man or was he just really short-sighted?
It's interesting because from what I read, he wasn't necessarily malicious.
Mm-hmm.
I think he genuinely believed in his plan,
Okay.
at least at first.
Mm.
But as the scheme gained momentum,
Mm-hmm.
it seems like he got caught up in the hype.
So he became a victim of his own success in a way.
Exactly. He was so focused on keeping that share price rising
Mm-hmm.
that he ignored all the warning signs, all the cracks that were starting to appear in the foundation.
Yeah, it's like he lost sight of the bigger picture.
He did. And what's really fascinating is that this pattern of short-sightedness, it's not just limited to like historical events like this. We see it all the time, even today. Like think about the dot-com bubble, the real estate crash.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, are we doomed to repeat these mistakes over and over again?
Yeah, it's like this vicious cycle.
It is.
So how do we break free from the cycle of short-sightedness?
Well, the book outlines 4 key warning signs to help us recognize when we're falling into that trap. And we'll dive into those right after the break.
Sounds good. I'm really curious to hear what those are because I have a feeling I might be guilty of a few of them myself.
Oh, I think we all are, to some extent.
Well, let's take a quick break and then we'll come back and explore those warning signs in more detail.
Sounds good.
So those warning signs, what were they?
Okay, so the first one the book talks about is unintended consequences.
Unintended consequences.
Yeah, it's basically this idea that sometimes the solutions that seem perfectly logical at the time can actually backfire in like a really big way.
Oh, okay. I've definitely experienced that before.
Oh, yeah, me too. And like one of the classic examples they give is the cobra bounty in Delhi.
The cobra bounty in Delhi.
Yeah, so back when the British were ruling India,
Right.
they were facing this like cobra problem in Delhi. So they offered a reward for every dead cobra.
Oh, so like they were trying to incentivize people to like get rid of the cobras.
Exactly. It seemed like a pretty straightforward solution.
Yeah, totally makes sense.
But here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
So, people being the clever beings that we are, they saw this as like an opportunity.
Oh, no.
They started breeding cobras
What?
just to collect the bounty.
Oh my gosh, are you
Yeah, I
serious?
know it sounds
That's
crazy,
insane.
but it actually happened.
Wow, so they created like a whole cobra farming industry.
Yeah, pretty much. And when the British realized what was going on, they scrapped the program.
Oh, so what happened to all the cobras?
Well, the breeders, they were left with all these cobras and no more incentives, so they just released them all back into the city.
Oh no, so the solution actually made the problem worse.
Exactly. It's a perfect example of how even like well-intentioned actions can have unintended and often negative consequences.
Yeah, it's like that saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Right.
Okay, so that's unintended consequences. What's the next warning sign?
The next one is tactical hell.
Tactical hell.
Yeah. And this is when we get so caught up in the day-to-day, like the urgent tasks,
Mm-hmm.
that we lose sight of the bigger picture and our long-term goals.
Oh, I totally know what you mean. It's like being so focused on putting out fires that you forget to plan for the future.
Exactly. And the book gives this analogy of like running on a treadmill.
Oh, yeah.
You're working really hard, but you're not actually getting anywhere.
That's a great analogy. I've definitely felt that way before, especially at work.
Yeah, I think we all have to some extent.
So how do we avoid falling into this tactical hell?
Well, the key is to recognize when it's happening and then make a conscious effort to step back and regain that strategic perspective.
Okay, so like take a break from the day-to-day and think about the bigger picture.
Exactly. Like ask yourself, what are my long-term goals
Hmm.
and am I actually making progress towards them?
Those are great questions to ask. I'm going to have to start doing that more often.
Yeah, me too. It's easy to get caught up in the weeds.
Okay, so we've got unintended consequences and tactical hell. What's the third warning sign?
Okay, this one is particularly relevant to our modern world, and the book calls it ticker tape fever.
Ticker tape fever.
Now, we might not have those old ticker tape machines anymore,
Right.
but we have something even more powerful.
What's that?
It's the constant stream of information, news updates, all the stuff that bombards us 24/7.
Oh yeah, our phones are practically glued to our hands these days. Social media, news alerts, emails, it never stops.
Exactly, and while it's great to be informed, this constant influx of information can actually hinder our ability to make good decisions.
How so?
Well, we become so focused on the micro trends, the daily ups and downs, that we lose sight of the long-term patterns and the underlying trends that really matter.
It's like we're so busy watching the waves that we miss the tide coming in.
Exactly, and the book contrasts this with the approach of someone like Abraham Lincoln.
Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, imagine the pressure he faced during the Civil War, with constant calls to either negotiate with the South or escalate the conflict.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
But Lincoln, through his deep understanding of history and his patient and strategic mindset, was able to weather those storms and ultimately lead the Union to victory.
That's an incredible example. It really highlights the importance of cultivating a far-sighted perspective.
It does, and it makes you wonder, how did Lincoln manage to stay so grounded and focused amidst all that pressure?
Right, like what was his secret?
Well, one key factor was his deep understanding of history. He was able to step back from the immediate situation and view it within a larger context.
Okay, so he wasn't just reacting to events, he was thinking about the long-term consequences.
Exactly, and that's something we can all learn from.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we've covered 3 warning signs: unintended consequences, tactical hell, and ticker tape fever. What's the final one?
The last one is called Lost in Trivia, and it's basically that feeling of being completely overwhelmed by details where you can't even tell what's important anymore.
Lost in trivia. Huh. I think I might struggle with this one sometimes.
Yeah, I think we all do, to some extent. It's like that classic case of missing the forest for the trees.
Mm-hmm.
We get so bogged down in the minutia that we completely lose sight of the bigger picture, you know?
Right, and the book has this like fascinating story about King Philip II of Spain.
Oh, yeah, he was obsessed with details,
Hmm.
like to a ridiculous degree.
Wait, really? Like what kind of details?
Well, for example, he would spend days agonizing over the placement of toilets in his palace.
Seriously, toilets.
Toilets, yeah. Meanwhile, he was neglecting crucial information about, like, wars and national security.
Oh, wow. That's taking micromanagement to a whole new level.
It is, and it's a great example of how getting lost in those kinds of trivial details can lead to some pretty disastrous decisions.
Yeah, I can definitely see that happening. Okay, so we've got these 4 warning signs of short-sightedness, unintended consequences, tactical hell, ticker tape fever, and lost in trivia. But the book doesn't just leave us hanging with these warnings, right?
No, it
It
does.
offers some practical strategies for cultivating a more far-sighted perspective.
Right.
So what are some of those strategies?
Well, one of the most powerful and perhaps simplest strategies is to detach from the heat of the moment.
Okay.
Whenever you're facing a tough decision, a conflict, or even just a wave of strong emotions, hit that pause button.
So, like, take a step back, breathe deeply, and resist the urge to react impulsively.
Exactly. Give yourself that space to cool down and think things through.
It's like that classic advice, count to 10 before you say something you'll regret.
Right. But in this case, it's about counting to 10 or maybe even 100 before making a decision.
I like that. And while you're in that pause state, what should we be doing?
Use that time to really consider the bigger picture.
Okay.
What are the potential long-term consequences of this decision?
Yeah.
How does it align with my overall goals?
Speaking of goals, that brings us to another key strategy. Consider your long-term goals.
Right, it seems obvious.
Right.
But the book argues that most of us don't actually spend enough time thinking about what we truly want to achieve in life.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day that we forget to think about the bigger picture.
Exactly. And so the idea is to take some time to really define those goals. Write them down, visualize them, and then, most importantly, use them as a guiding principle in your decision-making.
So it's not just about setting goals, it's about actively using them as a compass to navigate our choices.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
What's the final strategy the book suggests?
This one is perhaps the most challenging, but also the most rewarding.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
It's about expanding your time frame.
Expanding my time frame.
Yeah, the book uses this beautiful analogy of a mountain.
Okay.
Imagine yourself standing at the base of a mountain surrounded by trees with a very limited view. As you start to climb higher, your perspective widens. You can see more of the landscape and you start to understand how everything is interconnected.
I love that analogy.
So how do we apply that to our thinking?
Yeah, that's a good question.
What's about consciously stretching our mental time horizon both backwards and forwards?
Okay.
So when facing a challenge, don't just look at the immediate situation. Consider the historical context, the events and decisions that led up to this point.
And when making a decision, don't just think about the next few weeks or months. Project yourself years, even decades into the future.
Wow. So like think about the long-term impact.
Exactly what impact will this choice have on your life down the road? How will it shape the world around you?
It's almost like thinking generationally, isn't it?
It is.
Not just about what's good for me right now, but what kind of world am I creating for myself and for future generations?
Well, it's a powerful shift in perspective.
It is, and while it's not always easy to maintain that expanded time frame, I can see how it would be incredibly valuable.
The book argues that it's essential not just for our own individual well-being, but for the future of humanity as a whole.
So there you have it, the law of short-sightedness, its allure, its dangers, and most importantly, the tools we can use to overcome it. This has been a really insightful conversation.
Me too. It's a powerful reminder that while we may be wired for short-term thinking, we're not slaves to our biology.
Right, we have the power to choose how we respond.
We can choose to be swept away by the heat of the moment. Or we can choose to cultivate a more mindful, strategic, and ultimately far-sighted approach to life.
And that choice is ours to make every single day. Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive, but I want to leave you with this question. What area of your life could benefit from a more far-sighted lens? Maybe it's your career, your relationships, or even just your daily habits this week. Try applying some of the strategies we've discussed and see what happens. You might be surprised at the long-term impact of even small shifts in perspective. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to subscribe for more deep dives into fascinating topics. Until next time, keep diving deep.